you share? What best practices can you share? And what are basically the outcomes of deciding a shorter attribution window compared to a 28-day attribution window?
We have a thing called MTTI. It's an acronym. I've got a bad habit of coming up with acronyms so I can remember them and tokenize them across the team. But MTTI is mean time to install. And it's the time from the click until the first launch. So a little bit misnomer because it's not install, it's the first launch, but that's the world we live in. We all know that that's what it is. So MTTI is the standard deviation from the click to the first launch.
All your clicks, even if they're duplicate clicks.
Yep. And we measure that and track that as a kind of supplemental element on top of everything else that is being done. And what you find is different app verticals have different MTTIs.
Absolutely.
Hookup apps are very quick. Gaming apps are a little longer. I mean, they're typically 32 hours-ish, and depends on strategy or core. There's a lot of interesting nuances, and then finance apps. They're like 7 days because you really want to get your finances in order, but later. I'll get that downloaded and installed, and then I'll launch it later. And so what we always have, from a methodology perspective, our recommendation is you take a look at the natural curve of MTTI from a set of campaigns, and that should be the basis of your look back, because the camel's hump is the highest intent. And that audience is the one that you should be paying a premium for. Now, if you want to extend your look back window beyond that, great, but slice it out in multiple campaigns, multiple trackers, multiple segment tiers, so that you can actually see what's working and what's not in that same A/B kind of fashion.
Okay, so you suggest testing and looking at these.
Yeah, you should look at the natural MTTI, and that should drive the look back.
Yep.
And if you're a publisher in the room, if you're an ad network in the room, and someone says, I want to do an IO and I want to have a 48-hour, 36-hour, 72-hour look back window, ding, 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 we've got a premium here. We've got an opportunity to take advantage of the inventory that we clearly have demonstrated with them.
Yep.
I mean, I agree. Looking at the curve, we've pulled the data umpteen times. We use a 7-day last click attribution window as a standard. From there, we see in the first few hours, you're getting 90–95% of installs. We pulled the data. You don't see the trailing into 28 days. That extends across. It's usually a question that comes from the network, not the advertiser, about the attribution.
Do you guys have configurable look back windows?
We do not. We keep it standard across all of our partners.
Again, not trying to be rough, but
raise your hand if you have.
That thing's going to hit me if I'm not being rough enough.
We really look. We talk to our advertisers about optimizing to a CPA and the action in app. And we spend our time there.
I think it depends on what you're trying to do with look back windows. If you're trying to actually determine, like from an insights perspective, what are the value of these two partners, comparing them against each other, you might want to use the exact same data, right? And you might even play with it, and you might not use a window at all. You might just look at what are the proximities in general, and how does this kind of look. At the beginning, we started with like 3-day look back windows. Before Facebook mobile app install ads, and then sort of 7 became the industry standard for a while, and then Facebook came in and be like, oh, we're going to take a month, right? And that was for compensation, right? That they wanted to be compensated for that, and they are a very premium source, and they know that they are, and you're gonna do it, you're gonna take it, and it's gonna work for you, and they're gonna give you really high value users. And so they can take more in that negotiation that you were talking about there. So when you think about what am I going to set for look back windows for the rest of my partners, it kind of depends on what kind of business person you are. Am I going to try to work people on my look back window, or I'm going to try to compare people the same and similar and try to make them really equal in comparison and pay people sort of fairly? That's it's kind of up to you.
But also, and I don't think you disagree with this, the feedback loop of post-backs back to the ad networks drives the waterfall and the positioning.
Right.
And so let there be no mistake. You are in charge of how much exposure you get. And look back window is just as much of an ingredient in that picture because it's creating that positive feedback loop that prioritizes.
Absolutely. I mean, yes, we're giving the power to the advertiser, but that will have a strong impact on the potential that they have in a waterfront, right?
Yep.
So, cool. I wanna move to a more. I'm sure it's a topic that will add some discrepancy here. So basically, I'm worried because we're talking about an ideal environment where not everyone is playing the same rules, and I'm not going to mention names, but not everyone is actually sharing the same amount of data, and not everyone is sharing it's using it in the same way, right? Who in our industry is in charge of the data integrity, and that clicks that are being sent to you guys are actual clicks? If we're moving to a view through or a multi-touch attribution, that views are also views, and that we all have the same definition of views, and that we're basically playing the same rules. Ad networks, advertisers, third-party attributions, who should be in charge of that? Because right now, we don't have that picture right now.
We should be solving those problems. I mean, this is a technology problem.
Yep.
Discrepancies in data integrity, all these things can be solved. And you just it's a cat and mouse game a little bit because there's always something new that's coming in. If you move a little bit more toward the topic of fraud, then it's a game around thresholds and around ratios and around things like that, right? And you just got to get tighter and tighter and have better ways to slice and better ways to look at it. And that's what we're here to do, is build technology for people to solve those problems. There's lots of companies and advertisers out there that have built those solutions themselves and work very hard in their own data integrity.
Mm-hmm. But there's some principles that you were asking about, Pepe. I mean, the principle was, should there be a standards body? I mean, that's really what you're inferring.
Well, I mean, are you even doing a due diligence of the networks that you're integrated with when accepting them as a source?
So here's our perspective. This may be the same, this may be different, but our perspective is we believe that at the end of the day, this is the advertiser's data, whether it's organic installs or clicks or paid installs. This is all the advertiser's data. So our responsibility is to make sure, belt and suspenders, we're doing the right things with the data, and we have contracts that support that. Mm-hmm. So every customer app is in its own shard in our system. There's no kind of commingling at the schema level that ends up happening. There's no accidental SQL query that can pull data out in a bad way. We've got facilities in our technology that if a publisher has a particular requirement around how we handle the data that they send in, like for example Facebook, they've got a particular set of requirements. We've got a programmatic mechanism that will automatically purge data, will re-anonymize the data after a period of time so that it's all automated and you don't have to remember to do it. That's the kind of a right things right approach, because it says the advertiser with the advertiser dollars and who they choose as their measurement partner ultimately will be the market driver of what's the right approach. And you get a few slip-ups in the market where the data is not handled right, and then that gets learned, that gets processed. And but I think row-level data and aggregate level data ultimately is our customers, and they need to have that.
So when you think about, we have a certified partner program trying to get people to follow some best practices, right? And it's very early, and we're all sort of coming along with these things.
What does that mean, by the way?
So we have 12, I think, criteria right now, and across those, it's things like, have their postback template set properly, are sending clicks properly, whether it's synchronous or direct, passing impression data, passing cost data, all the things that a marketer needs to know, are all these things already in place for me to start working with this partner, right? And it's really all and that's all it is. It's a checklist of okay, I'm a marketer. I know that these things are already going to be settled if I start working with this partner, and we're going to start molding that a little bit more and get a little bit tighter around, making sure everyone's trying to do the same things and work together. The thing is that on our platform, you also need to be able to work with partners that aren't partners of ours, and maybe sources that we've never heard of, and you need to be able to spin up a campaign and work with those people. we're obviously not going to be vetting that partner or figuring out, what's their MO or if they're passing clicks properly. So there has to still be that agility and flexibility for you to be able to take any channel and pour it in, and then we can apply our own mechanisms to try to clean it up on the other side.
Mm-hmm. Do you all have programs like this?
Absolutely.
Yeah, sure. And I mean, what you recognize, especially when we're doing, sorry, I'll let you get
No, it's like, yeah, sure.
Yeah, sure. No, the thing is, I mean, I'm sure Ben recognizes this as well, because when you are, looking at customers' data, and of course, as soon as a client has a problem with their app data, they come running to you and they start blaming you immediately. Mm-hmm. So if you're sitting as last line tech support, and especially if you're doing network integration at the same time, you are kind of eager that your networks are doing the right thing, right? So at that point, there's a real incentive for tracking partners to make sure that the network partners are following certain standards, And I've been on a lot of very hairy calls when someone's sending the wrong kind of, let's say, the wrong kind of impression or the wrong kind of view through, and it comes out looking all the weird in the end system, right? So, what you wind up doing is these kind of programs that I think we're seeing a lot more of lately, not just from our side, but also from the network sides. We're looking at, okay, well, how well does that come together, and are you actually following these kind of rules? And so at that point, you can go, I guess, one of two ways. You can either go and try and integrate as many partners as possible, or you can say, okay, well, what are actually the sources we're going to work with primarily, and then provide, as Peter's talking about, how do we do that dynamically once someone comes with a special request or something.
But the misnomer, again, for the folks that haven't run their head against the wall several hundred times, the misnomer is like you find it, you fix it, we're all good, and it's golden seals approval that's above it. And that's not entirely the case, because when you have an ad network that is a loosely coupled agile ad network that has any number of publishers who are participating in that ad network and who may be mediating with other ad networks as well, you end up having to have just as much kind of reputational overlay on the site ID by the ad network as you do on the ad network. And it's actually a false positive to believe we're good to go, this ad network is trustworthy, because if you turn around to the ad network, good, healthy, red-blooded, well-meaning people, they say, would you look at that? It's a bad publisher. My bad, let me blacklist it. Mm-hmm. So it's this constant cat and mouse that Peter was talking about, and that's the issue. So I would argue it's not just a, we don't kind of look at it as a certified list, but we do a stack rank that is by the kind of data the partner sends. Mm-hmm. And then there's kind of this kind of overtone of reputational value based on usage. Hurts you at first because you're a brand new pub, but it helps you over time because you've proved your worth. Yep.
And are you guys doing anything to detect fraud, specifically app install fraud, click fraud, and how can we partner ad networks and everyone involved in the marketing ecosystem? How can we all help advertisers detect fraudulent sources of traffic?
Absolutely. I think on the fraud issue, it does come up. We're very committed to data transparency to our advertisers, of showing the raw data, what was the click, what was the site ID, having access to what we send back to the network, and also working with the network to show them that information too. So if there is publishers or issues, a lot of networks are added security tokens and fields to verify the data integrity that they're going.
I have the feeling though that the weight right now falls on the networks only. What are you guys doing to prevent fraud?
So we track the crap out of all of this. And what we have is a specific fraud product. You just get it at no additional charge if you're at a certain volume. And our thesis behind this, at least now, is if you're at that volume, you're worrying about it, and if you're not worrying about it. And over time, we may monetize it differently, but that's our current model. And what it is we've got between 6 and 9 algorithms that we run through, and the publisher starts to care about fraud when the advertiser has more information than the publisher and says, I'm not paying this bill because of this data, and here are the specific records that back it up. Yep. And then it's a whack-a-mole strategy, because you literally just do that 1 month, and then it's a separate set of site IDs the next month, and it's a separate set of site IDs.